been reflecting on this topic of what makes life meaningful for the last several weeks since I knew I'd be here. And really, this topic is so vast. There's so much that could be said about this. I feel like in some ways, as I reflect on my own journey into meditation practice, this question of what makes life meaningful, how can I make my life meaningful, is really what brought me to the path, what brought me to meditation. And along the way, I think that question of what is it that makes life meaningful is also what has kept me on the path. You have some insight, and then I feel like that there's this underlying curiosity for me around this topic that has really motivated my journey in meditation and practice over the last many years. And it keeps expanding and growing. And I think, at the beginning of the path for me, it was very, very much like, how can I, there was a lot of internal kind of turmoil I had when I started meditating. I think maybe a lot of us can relate to that. I was sort of depressed and having a tough time, and just coming out of university and trying to figure out, what am I going to do with my life? And in the beginning, meditation practice for me was really about trying to deal with that kind of existential question. And then I think over time, as the practice works and I start to feel a little more relaxed, then what is it that makes life meaningful keeps expanding naturally outward. Like, how can I be of service in this world? How can I help others? What does it really mean to live a life where I'm kind and compassionate? And what does it mean to make a positive difference in this world? How can I do that? Recognizing that life is short. I don't know how long I have. How can I make the most of each day? And so I think this question really, for me, has propelled me along the journey. And then it also, I think it really, asking this question is really important, because it also sets your sight on where you want to go. It's kind of like orienting yourself in a way that feels like, okay, I really want to set my path that direction. And I think if we don't take the time to really think about what is it that makes life meaningful, we can invest a lot of time or sort of doing things that aren't actually contributing to that, and then feel like something's off. Like, I don't know why I'm not feeling like I did all this stuff today, and I don't know why. I don't really feel that satisfied with it. And so I think the interesting thing, and really a key point that Mingyur Rinpoche makes, and has really made a big difference to me, is that what we do doesn't necessarily have to change that much, but the intention we bring to it, the way that we do it, makes a huge difference. And of course, what we're doing might change also as we keep reflecting and exploring this topic and exploring our life on the path, but how we do it is really critical also. So I think that's one of the things we'll explore today. So I wanted to sort of open it up now and kind of get all of us thinking. We have 70 of us here, and kind of draw on our collective wisdom a little bit about this topic. And I want to give you a couple minutes now to think about, what are some moments in your life, might be if just a few seconds, a few minutes, or it might be like an experience you had in your life where you really felt like today right now my life is meaningful. Think about that in your own life. You might want to write it down. You might just want to think about it. Just think about some moments that stand out to you in your life where you think, that was a moment my life was really meaningful. It felt meaningful. Felt that there's something there. So I'm just going to give you 1 or 2 minutes to reflect on that. You may think of different moments. So then you can keep reflecting, but if you want to share in the chat, we'll open up the chat. And please share 1 or 2 moments if you feel comfortable. And let's hear from each other. What were some moments that felt meaningful? So please feel free to type it in. The time I went to India with my mom and we received teachings together for Mingyur Rinpoche. That's lovely. Giving, yeah. When students have told me how much I've helped them, yeah, wonderful. Being a parent, learning unconditional love, busking at the farmer's market, that's fun. Sharing a smile with a stranger, lovely. Sitting with my son, daughter, and son-in-law on the deck, enjoying the sunshine and each other's company. Session with the client yesterday. So make sure you switch it to chat with everyone so that everyone can see your comments. Being there for my mom when she was in the hospital. Yeah. Spending time with my grandson when he reaches for me and I know he trusts and loves me. Becoming a mother also, the years that I studied ballet. Wonderful. Giving birth to my son. Anyone else? Listening when my adult children want to talk. Yeah. Listening is great. And I was able to share my experience and my insight to help others, and others expressed gratefulness. And I connected with myself or nature, something bigger, when I do something for others. Wonderful. Caring for my dying mother, helping my mom pass away. Yeah, for me too, I remember my grandfather passing away. It's a poignant moment. Great. So already, I think if you look at these comments, or as you're listening to them, it's amazing how so many of them involve these moments where we feel like we're practicing loving kindness and compassion, connecting with others. So in the topic today and the theme, I think many of you have read that we're really going to be exploring awareness, loving kindness, compassion, wisdom. And you can see already in the comments, all of those are there. So awareness is critical. If we're not aware, if we're not present to what's going on, we miss it. We don't really remember that we're not really present with our life. So that's fundamental. And then these moments of really connecting with our loving kindness and compassion that's there. And I think almost all the comments that we received, something is connecting there. Being with my sister as she's dying, being a dad, helping my client, helping animals. It's like there's a part of us that knows that's our real, that's who we are. We're connecting with our innate goodness, our innate loving kindness and compassion. And our wisdom is knowing that's who we are. That's what makes life meaningful. And then of course the wisdom is also there of, it's fascinating how many people already wrote when someone passes away, when someone's dying, when someone's coming into the world. These are moments that really highlight impermanence, highlight the passing, fleeting nature of life. I think really brings to mind and shows us what's meaningful. And so, yeah, really wonderful. Thank you. So I'll pass it on to George now. He can continue to share some thoughts, and we'll go to a Q&A. Hi, George.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Really beautiful, beautiful, ways that, how do you know when life is meaningful? And really, how does meditation make life meaningful? How do we get the skills to make our life more meaningful? And, as Jess said, a lot of those answers had to do with, expressing our loving kindness and compassion. So in Joy of Living level 2, we're obviously getting in touch with that. But there were others that were like being with nature and, things like that. So simply bringing awareness to our current experience as a human, as a sentient being. So this is another tool that we get through Joy of Living level 1. In this day and age, it's not surprising that people lose sight of what makes life meaningful. All you have to do is open up a web page or a newspaper, if there is such a thing anymore. Walk down the street and look at, advertisements everywhere. You'll be happy if you get this. You'll be better if you get that. This is the thing that you need to make your life complete. So we, in the book Joy of Living, I think it's on page 2, Rinpoche writes, "You're perfect just as you are. You just don't believe that, do you?" And most of us forget that. Most of us don't believe it, or we forget it. And we look for all these outward resources to bring us happiness. Money, fame, friendship, love, drugs, alcohol. Some are skillful, some are incredibly unskillful. But the motivation for all of these is trying to find happiness and trying to be free of suffering. So when we come to the Joy of Living program and we start to practice meditation and we recognize that anything can be used for support of our meditation, means that we can be present to absolutely anything. If I'm in a conversation, if I'm walking down a trail, if I'm any place and I'm not paying attention, which is honestly how I live much of my life, not paying that much attention. I don't bump into things. I pay enough attention that I don't do that. But I'm not using meditative awareness. And in meditative awareness, whether it's our formal or informal practice, we can really be present to whatever it is that's happening, whether it's the sound of a bird, a beautiful sunrise. Oftentimes these are things that we go out of our way to recognize, to see. Let's wake up at 5 o'clock and go see the sunrise. But there's many, many, many smaller aspects in our life that I think we, at least I, miss on a regular basis, unless I'm actively practicing on the cushion or off the cushion and inviting all these things into, to be present, to be fully human. So whether that is simply being aware of my surroundings, being aware of the people around me, the sentient beings around me, the beauty around me, the fact that, you know, I'm in India in a Dharma center today, which means that I've got, you know, I'm not scraping by to try and find my next meal. I've got, you know, I've got shelter taken care of for at least the foreseeable future. I, you know, all these things that I don't bring into my awareness to recognize that I have certain advantages. You know, bringing some gratitude is another amazing practice that Rinpoche teaches us. So just recognizing that. And then, of course, touching into, which we've already touched on a bit, you know, loving kindness and compassion. All those things when we're working with other people, other beings, whether they're people, animals, doesn't really matter. But, you know, really touching into our innate well-being, touching into our innate compassion, our innate loving kindness, our innate qualities. And, you know, this is what drives us. This is what drives us even to make those unhealthy decisions. But when we pair that with the awareness from Joy of Living level 1 and the wisdom of Joy of Living level 3, I think that we are given an incredible toolbox that really helps meditation make our lives meaningful. If we sit down on the cushion, and, you know, Rinpoche always talks about view, meditation, application. So we get the view from Mingyur Rinpoche. We get the meditation in our homework for each one of these sessions. And the application is really where these seeds begin to bloom, where the meaning really starts to come to fruition in our lives, if we're present for it. You know, it's very easy to get lost in a cell phone or a computer or a television or, you know, looking for happiness someplace outside. But really, the more we begin to look inside, you'll remember from very early on in Joy of Living level 1, Rinpoche, you know, shares with us the Tibetan word for meditation is gom, Gom, which is oftentimes translated as to become familiar with. So as we become familiar with our innate qualities, as we begin to not connect with awareness, but recognize awareness, as we begin to not cultivate our loving kindness and compassion, but recognize and solidify our recognition of loving kindness, compassion, and wisdom. These, I think, are the incredibly invaluable tools we get from meditation through the Joy of Living program that, you know, make my life personally incredibly meaningful. The ability to share this with all of you is in no small part due to, you know, exactly what I just talked about. All these Joy of Living programs, all these Joy of Living practices, and the teachings that we've received from Mingyur Rinpoche and the Tergar guides. So, yeah, I'd love to hear questions. I'd love to hear what anybody else has to share, ideas, whatever it might be. But yeah, I think it's fairly self-evident how many tools we receive from the Joy of Living program through these meditation practices to make our life meaningful. And as Tim Olmsted oftentimes says, to, you know, to fully embrace our humanness, to become active in our humanness, especially when we touch into our loving kindness and compassion, and then use the wisdom to be a bit more skillful in trying to find happiness, trying to avoid suffering. I think that's all I've got for opening remarks. Yeah, Alexandria, do we have any questions? Or Jess, do you have anything else to add?
Oh, it was wonderful, George. I think questions are great.
Thank you both. This first person shares, I am very aware that my mind is constantly hungry, relentlessly seeking external pleasure, but I don't know how to find the same feeling of happiness inside myself instead. Because I don't know how to find the same feeling of happiness inside myself instead. My question is, what actually is peace and contentment? Where are they found? What do they feel like? And crucially, how do we nurture them and let go of this insatiable hunger for external pleasure? Thank you.
I've got a pithy little comment, and then I'll let you share, Jess, because I
Oh,
saw you
good.
popped your microphone off. But yeah, the first thing I thought of was a saying I actually shared with somebody today, that happiness isn't getting what you want, but or not having what you want, but wanting what you have. Because if we buy into, if we look online, there's always something that's going to promising, shiny, happy, you know, peace and contentment. Where if we, just take a few moments to start to recognize what we already have. If we really, that's where I think contentment comes in, being aware and really looking realistically at what we have. If you look back, I mean, imagine, this is also a conversation I had earlier today. Imagine 50 or 100 years ago, my worst day is probably, I don't know how many times better than, an ancestor who was struggling to make a living in whatever, I'm not saying that this day and age is perfect, but we certainly have a lot more comforts, a lot more advantages than folks did in the past. And it doesn't take much. I mean, just there are some countries where it's a little easier to see that than others. I happen to be in one where it's pretty obvious that the advantages I have and those around me are fairly substantial, and oftentimes I just take those for granted. So again, I think it's not so much having what I want, but wanting what I have, and really developing that sense of gratitude and appreciation. Jess?
Yeah, thanks, George. Well, it's such a great question. I mean, really, this question of, the thing I love about the question is, one is recognize, already in the question, you're recognizing the problem, which is this sense of like wanting something outside, wanting something we don't have, which George mentioned, the sense of like dissatisfaction. And in some ways, this is really harkening back. I mean, we're in the Joy of Living program, but this was Buddha's very first teaching on the Four Truths, is sort of like touching on this topic of really, we have this kind of sense of dissatisfaction. How can we find contentment? I mean, it's really, I think, a fundamental question that we keep exploring. There's not just one answer here, I think, but my sense is that, when we talk about, the way that we learn about awareness, loving kindness, compassion, wisdom in the Joy of Living is really, there's this encouragement again and again that we're recognizing something that's already there. We're recognizing qualities of who we already are. And for me, I think it's when I connect and recognize with those qualities that, oh, I have this awareness. And awareness is, there's contentment there. It's not like flashy or this sort of extreme joy. It's like awareness itself, as I've learned to connect with it through practice. For me, that's a quality of my mind, of who I am, that feels like okay. So when those moments where I'm feeling like I need something outside myself, when I connect with awareness, for me at least, there's a feeling of like awareness is always complete and always okay. And then of course these other qualities of loving kindness, compassion, which is just really this fundamental recognition of, oh, I want to be happy. I want to be free from suffering. I want others to be happy, free from suffering. And this kind of curiosity I have about the world, and all of these qualities and all these different ways that we're learning to connect with our innate well-being through the whole Joy of Living path is about this. And I think it's always up and down, especially at the beginning. It's like some days we feel, oh yeah, this is really working. I'm getting somewhere. I really feel like connected with my innate well-being. Next day you might feel, I don't know where it went. And that's just part of the path. But I think for me, it's those moments where I feel connected, that I feel, oh yeah, this is, I'm going in the right direction, because there's some part of me that feels like, oh yeah, this is who I am, and this is what really makes me feel content in a certain way. So
I wrote down, awareness is always okay. Thank you, Jess and George, for that response to this question. And I just want to encourage everyone to ask, if you have a question, to post it, or even to be courageous and raise your virtual hand. We're all friends here. We're all sitting and having the same motivation. I understand sometimes there's nervousness, but no need. This next person writes and shares, in recent years, I've had to deal with many family problems. I have a lot of responsibilities right now. Sometimes I feel hopeful, but other times I feel very tired, and I just want to retreat on the top of a mountain. My biggest worry when I have a down moment is, what can I do so that people and animals I have to take care of in the family don't perceive this moment of tiredness of mine? I know these moments of tiredness are temporary, but I'd like to experience them without feeling guilty about it.
can jump on this one, George, and maybe you have more to say. I think in some ways in your question, there's already a bit of the answer, where you say, I want to be able to experience it without feeling guilty about it. And in a way, I think, one of the things in your question is like, it's okay to be tired. We all feel tired. It's okay to have down days. We don't always have to be up, like, and allowing yourself to be up and down. I think, for me, that's one of the things meditation practice really helps with, is the sense of like, whatever I'm feeling right now is welcome. It's okay. That we don't sit down and say, okay, I'm feeling bad. I need to get rid of that and feel good. But just allowing everything to be there. And somehow, I think then also recognizing that we have a strength, that kind of, there's a sort of confidence and capacity that we start to recognize is there, even as we're up and down. So we're tired, and yet if you're aware, you're present, even within the tiredness, compassion is still there, loving kindness is still there. You're still meeting your family and your animals and the world with kindness, with compassion, with awareness, even though you don't feel great maybe inside, but just showing up and not having to put on a mask, not having to put on a fake smile or pretend that you're something you're not. I think when we show up as we are, people connect with that. There's some part of us that sees that and feels safe, welcome in that moment. And I think I certainly feel that. And the people that I really feel safe and comfortable with, they're not always happy, but I feel like they're honest, they're open, and so I think already your question shows me that, and the way you phrase it shows me we already know this somehow. Like you already know, okay, I want to be as I am. I don't want to feel guilty about it. So it just takes practice. We have these habits, and but maybe just trying, we test it out. Maybe I can be tired and be present. Anything to add to that, George?
I thought that was great. The only thing I would add might be, Rinpoche says oftentimes, put your own just like they say on an airplane, put your own oxygen mask on before helping others. There's saying that an empty vessel has nothing to give. So that feeling of tiredness is our own innate wisdom, much of the time. That we need to take some time and rejuvenate. Otherwise, we can't be our best for everyone else. So I think there's certainly wisdom in listening to that and communicating that honestly. I don't know your situation. I'm not sure why it's you wouldn't be able to. That it wouldn't be good for other folks to recognize you're tired, but being tired seems very human to me, and I think it's okay to be human. Again, I don't know your situation, so I can't say, but yeah, I think just letting your innate wisdom shine through and resting when you're tired, and being compassionate to ourselves is really important and challenging for a lot of us.
And you reminded me, George, too, like George and I are both passionate people about retreat. George is just starting a week-long retreat. I love retreat. Both of us have spent a lot of time on our own in practicing. And I think sometimes in our society, there's a sense of like, well, if I'm going to be a good person, I need to be constantly helping other people, and it needs to be visible and evident. And taking that time to spend alone practicing, if we have that opportunity, which is a gift and not always easy to find, it doesn't maybe look from the outside like we're helping others, like, well, you're off alone, and how is that helping anyone? But I think all of us have we're all here because we've connected with meditation practice, but for me, it took me a while actually to get over that kind of maybe a little bit of guilt of like, oh, well, how is it really helping? I'm off for 5 months or something. But that really gives you the chance to connect with all these qualities that we're talking about, and to take care of yourself. Like that's putting your own oxygen mask on. And then you come back able to help in a different way, able to, really keep going. So going in and out, like sometimes we need to be alone, and then we have the capacity and strength and energy to help in the world.
This person shares, I am in level 1. I'm struggling to focus not on the goal, but the journey to meditate. But I constantly feel disappointed in myself for having this monkey mind and going down into a rabbit hole, feeling irritated, frustrated, angry at situations, at people, etc. I understand it is a good thing to be aware of my feelings. It is just so challenging. I feel I am going crazy. Not sure what I'm asking. Perhaps you can share some of your experience, insights, and tips to help me stay on this path.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, if monkey mind wasn't a very common thing, it wouldn't, Mingyur Rinpoche would not have included it in Joy of Living Level 1. It's not called that, but it is in a lot of the basic texts upon which this program is based. The whole idea of mind racing off in other directions. And we're given these tools, especially in Joy of Living Level 1. And Rinpoche talks about the waterfall experience, the place where, we've got so many thoughts, so many emotions, all sorts of stuff going on. And we're just starting to recognize them. Here in India, it's monsoon season. So the rivers are big and full and incredibly brown, just full of all the dirt and stuff that's coming down from the mountains. In the wintertime, they're calm. And this river here is wide and beautiful and clear, and You can see the fish in there, and you can see the rocks, and you can see the logs and the trees and maybe some garbage. You can't see that right now because everything's all stirred up. But as things begin to settle, as we begin to, practice in Joy of Living level 1 and connect with our awareness, we start to see what has always been around and we just weren't noticing. I know that you're not alone in thinking, oh, well, however long you've been in level 1, a week, a month, a year, that we should be completely fixed by now. I know I am still irritated, frustrated, and angry at situations and at people at times. My relationship to that has changed. First of all, I became aware of it and I recognized that I didn't have to say yes, sir, to every thought and every emotion I have, which was a huge insight for me. Then it probably took me 50,000 times or more of saying, I did it again. Oh, I did it again. Oh, I behaved that way again. Oh, I got angry again. Oh, I got irritated again. And then another 50,000 times of me saying, oh, I'm in the middle of doing it, but at least I recognize it. So the first 50,000 is really, and that's not a scientific number, but and it still happens. But now oftentimes I catch myself when I'm in the middle of behaving unskillfully. Not always. There certainly are times I'm like, oops, I did it again. Oops, I did it again. But now the percentage of those times is changing because of my practice. So, it's like going to the gym or jumping on a treadmill and expecting to run a marathon, in a week. Maybe we do a walk around the block. Then, maybe we jog around the block, and then we walk around 2 blocks, and then we jog around 2 blocks, and slowly we build up. That's why it's called meditation practice. We're practicing just like we would practice for a sporting event or anything else. I can't expect to be a concert pianist if I've, only taken 5 lessons of piano, or I've only been playing for 3 months or 6 months. So, all these things take patience. And I think it's really, really important to have these conversations. That's one of the beauties of having these webinars and having the forum in the Joy of Living Online, to normalize that this is exactly what I've gone through. Jess is nodding her head, and I'm sure she'll have something to share in a moment, but this is perfectly normal, absolutely normal. So yeah, I don't know if that's an insight or a tip, but that's certainly my experience, which I hope, helps to say you're not going crazy. This is the path. It's not always easy, but I have found it quite worthwhile so far. Any thoughts, Jess?
I think that was well said. I mean, I don't know if I should share this, but I really love this analogy that Mingyur Rinpoche gives, which is kind of gross, so apologies, but it stuck with me, which is in Tibet they use cow dung to heat their houses and stuff. So they collect the patties and they put them on the wall to dry them out. And so you end up, when they pull off the patties, once they're dry, you end up with this crusted manure on the wall. And so there's a kind of metaphor in Tibet that when you start the path, it's like cleaning poop off the wall. It seems like it doesn't have a smell. It doesn't really stink, but you see it there, something's not quite right. And sometimes when you start to practice, it's like you make the wall wet and suddenly it stinks like more. And it seems like maybe things are getting worse, but it's not actually getting worse. It's the process of cleaning, of cleaning this wall. And sometimes I think when we start practice, it feels like, I thought, I was okay before, but now, oh my God, I have all these feelings and I feel kind of like this is a lot. My mind is like crazy. It seems more crazy. And, but it's not actually more crazy. You're okay. And it can seem worse, but I think knowing that it might feel like that some days, and to just carry on and to start to notice that it's not, I think it helps also to recognize it's not always crazy, that there are moments that it feels okay. Some days we feel more crazy, some days we feel less crazy, feel more feelings, less feelings. Starting to notice that it's not like permanently like that can really help. When I'm feeling down or feeling kind of overwhelmed, remembering that like this too shall pass. You know, it's when we're having really good experiences, we want it to last forever, but of course they're going to go away. And where we're having down experiences, we think, oh my gosh, this is never going to end. And just knowing it will, and just trusting like, okay, I can get up, I can go for a walk. You sit down an hour from, even an hour later, sometimes it's like, oh, I feel different already. You go have a good sleep, you feel different, you know. So yeah, stay with it. It's very normal.
Thank you both for that encouragement that I can always use hearing again. Back to a written question. This person asks, do you think the phrases looking for happiness and freedom from suffering are misleading? They seem to imply we are lacking something and need to put in constant and exhausting effort rather than instead learning what happiness actually means and where it is found.
Uh, my brother has no interest in the joy of living or anything in this tradition because he, by his telling, doesn't suffer. And I think it's, when we look at the word suffering, we think of, somebody pulling our fingernails out with a pair of pliers. And that, the suffering is just, things could be a little bit better. Things aren't exactly the way I would like them. And the same for happiness. Things could be a little bit better. An infant, cries when it's hungry because it knows things could be a little bit better. I'm uncomfortable, and I know that the infant's innate wisdom recognizes that I don't have to suffer. I can have happiness. So I'm going to crawl out and I'm going to yell and scream and make all sorts of noise, and somebody's going to make it better. So, I don't want to. Yeah, I mean, just looking at the question, um, that the phrases are misleading and we should instead learn what happiness is and find out where it is. That sounds to me like looking for happiness in order to free ourselves from suffering. Quite honestly, it's our ignorance that puts this into play. It's not anything special. We are unskillful from the beginning, and we're just trying to find our way back to our innate well-being, our innate wisdom, our innate happiness, our innate joy. And we have all these tools in order to work for us. I don't think it's constant and exhaustive, the effort. It's really simply recognizing. Rinpoche always uses that example of the watch. If I think my watch is a bracelet, the happiness, the time is right there. I just haven't recognized it. The same with happiness and freedom from suffering. In the tradition, there's the story of the old blind man who holds up his cooking pot with 3 stones, one of which is a giant gem of some sort. But he doesn't recognize it as a gem, so he's incredibly poor. But he's got this incredibly valuable gemstone right in his cooking hearth. So we don't. It's that ignorance that we're looking to alleviate, and that's where the suffering comes from. And that's where, just like Jess, I've done all sorts of things in my life I wish I hadn't done. But if I hadn't done every one of them, I wouldn't be sitting here. So I'm pretty much okay with them. I'm sorry for the people that I hurt, but everything that I've done has gotten me to this point. And everything that I've done, I know, was me unskillfully looking for happiness and unskillfully trying to alleviate my own suffering, not considering necessarily other people's feelings, other, the ripple effect of what I might do. So I think maybe it's more a case of semantics, but I honestly don't think that the phrases themselves are misleading. We could phrase them a different way, but one way or the other, we're not recognizing our true nature. And that is causing our suffering, or our sense of everything's not exactly the way it should be.
I think it's one of those things where if we said from the beginning, well, you already have, like, we're kind of, the theme of the joy of living is we're recognizing something that's already there. And at the same time, we are sort of trying to uncover that and look for it, figure it out. So there's this kind of maybe a bit of a paradox of, like, from the beginning, contentment, happiness, meaning is already present. But if you say to someone who just shows up at the door, oh, well, you're already happy, so there's nothing to do, that's not very helpful, right? So somehow both of these things exist at once, where our innate well-being is already there. Awareness, loving kindness, compassion, wisdom is already there from the very beginning. It's present in all beings. And we still need to do the practice. We just need to put the effort in to uncover it, to look, figure it out, search for it, not find it, discover it was here all along. It's this kind of a paradox of the journey, that we're trying to get somewhere, and when we arrive, we realize, oh, it's kind of everything I was looking for is actually very present every moment. It was there with me all along, but I didn't recognize it. But we have to kind of, I think, look for it in order to really become confident in that.
Thank you both so much for being here with us this hour. I think, we're over the hour, so I think that will do us for today. But I think maybe, is it time for me now to share the closing dedication? Okay, wonderful.
Sure. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll just take 3 breaths together, just to kind of close up with some sort of meditation. Maybe appreciating that everybody's desire to be happy, to be free from suffering, to make their lives meaningful is why we all came today. And just taking a moment to recognize that and appreciate that. Leandro's willingness to come on live and everybody else's questions. And we'll take 1 or 2 breaths. Having recognized our mutual motivation to make life meaningful, to free ourselves from suffering, to free all beings from suffering. If you'd like to join me in the closing dedication, we can take another breath together. By the power of this compassionate practice, may suffering be transformed into peace. May the hearts of all beings be open, and their wisdom radiate from within. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Alexandria. Thank you, Jenny, in the background. Thanks everyone for attending. Really nice hour. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, George. Thank you, Alexandria. Thanks, Jenny. Thank you, everyone from all over the world, for your questions and for sharing, exploring this together. And yeah, we'll see you again soon, I hope.
Yeah. Just to echo those thanks and to give a thanks on behalf of everyone to you, to George and Jess, for being here with us, for being in this hour, for guiding us through practice, through sharing your experiences and answering our questions. And thank you to all of everyone who submitted I was not able to ask everyone's questions. And just as a reminder, any remaining or new questions can be shared on the forum for a group discussion, which is a great way to interact with your fellow student meditators. And the recording of this session will be made available within 72 hours. You can find the recording on the Joy of Living webinars page, which Ginny will post a link in just a moment. And also don't forget just to be looking out for future Joy of Living events on the page. And again, last but not least, a heartfelt, oh, thank you, George. George posted the link to the webinar. Thank you. And lastly, I'd like to thank everyone for your participation. And I was really touched by just the feeling of community. After we had that one person write in there sharing about them being tired and how challenging that was, we had 2 or 3 people write in actually just saying, their experience of this, and that sometimes tiredness is a gift. And I was just really touched by people, wanting to share and to support. So thank you all for showing up. This is what really makes these webinars special. So that's going to do it from us, our international crew today. And I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your morning, day, night, wherever you are in the world. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much.